So I'm having an event at my house tonight, and I'm going to show you guys the butternut squash spinach quiche that I'm going to be making. But alongside that, I threw together this mixed baby greens, orange segments, blackberries, and a few almonds. Simple salad, as well as this dressing to go with it. I thought I had it. I don't. This is just olive oil, lemon, white wine vinegar, honey, and chia seeds. So I'm going to get to the quiche now. The first thing I'm going to do for the quiche is get this butternut squash roasting in the oven. So I'm going to preheat it to 400 and start cutting it. I hate cutting butternut squash, but you gotta do it. So the first things I do is take off both ends, and then I cut it like where the straight side ends and the round part starts, just because I find it easier, and it's really hard. Okay, so after I do that, I cut this side in half, the bottom side where all the seeds are. And stand over the trash and scoop all this out. You want to use a spoon because it gets your fingers really sticky and it's really hard to take off. So I'll do that in a second, but first I peel this part by just starting at the top and going down the sides. All the way around. And this will take forever, so I do that all the way around, scoop this out with a spoon, and then cut the skin off this side the same way. So I cut up the butternut squash and drizzled it with olive oil, thyme, and salt and pepper, and I've got it roasting at 400, probably about 30 minutes till it's fork tender. Then I'm making my crust. This is half a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon and a half of sugar, a cup and a half of wheat flour, 2 tablespoons of almond milk, and half a cup of olive oil. And I'm just mixing it all together, and then I'm going to press it into the pan. Just press it in. And this is a double batch, so I'm making 2 pie crusts. So I pressed the crusts into the pans. This one's going to be mushroom, onion, spinach. This one's going to be onions, mushrooms, and butternut squash. I just lined the bottom of the crust with that. This is the same crust recipe I use for my vegetable pot pies. And what I usually do, since it's so, you can't really like hold it and drape it over a pan the way you would like a butter one, I roll it out in between 2 sheets of parchment paper, and then once it's flat and rolled out, I take off the top sheet of the parchment paper and I flip it onto the pan and then peel off the other parchment paper, and it seems to hold together pretty well. There are some cracks because it's more of a press-in crust recipe since it's with olive oil instead of butter or shortening. I do want to try it with coconut oil sometime to see if it makes a difference, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. So the butternut squash is still in the oven. Obviously we don't have dairy, so I'm making a cashew cream in place of the heavy cream part of the recipe. I'm not going to blend this right now because my child is asleep, and so I'm just going to set up the blender. I just throw some cashews in there and some water, not too much, and I'll do this later. And I'm just going to gather the rest of my ingredients for the filling and start getting that together. So I've blended my cream, my cashew cream, and I need 1 cup of this. So I'm going to measure it out. And I love using measuring cups instead of mixing bowls because it saves from dirtying more stuff. It's not quite 1 cup, so I'm going to fill the rest with almond milk just to avoid using more cashews. And it's not too short of 1 cup. It's like maybe a 1/4 cup there. So 1 cup. And I need 4 eggs. And I'm trying to be a lot more intentional about cracking eggs into a small container, a small bowl before you put it into where you need it, because in the rare occasion that it's a bad egg, you don't want to throw it directly into what you're making, you know. It's only ever happened to me once, but still, if it happens, especially with expensive eggs like farm fresh eggs and with expensive ingredients like cashews, you don't want to mess it all up. So we need 4 eggs. That was 3. And what can happen with eggs, if you get them at the farmer's market, like we do, this has only ever happened one time, but if when they go pick the eggs, they may miss one day and then see it the next day, and they don't know if it was, they think it's this day's egg, but it was actually yesterday's, and then it spoils, and it's nasty. It smells rotten. So I was making scrambled eggs for the family one morning and cracked a rotten egg, and I was like, that smells kind of weird, but I wasn't sure. And then Hector walked in and he was like, that smells weird. So 2 people saying it smells weird was enough to be like, let's throw this away. So that's that. And now all we need is half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of pepper. I'm so excited to see how these come out with cashew cream instead of heavy cream. Half a teaspoon of salt. Half a teaspoon of pepper. There we go. And now I'll just mix all of this up. And the butternut squash is probably ready. I'm going to check it out real quick so I can put it in the crusts and then pour this over. Nice. So you'll know if the butternut squash is ready if it's fork tender, if your fork slides into it easily. And I usually check the thicker pieces to make sure they're tender, because if they're tender, then obviously the thin ones are. And they are all nice and tender. You don't want it to be mush. You want it to have some texture to it. And then of course it's going to cook even longer now in the quiche. The quiche shouldn't take long though. It says about 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to let these cool just a minute, and I'm going to cut them into more bite-sized chunks like that with a knife and put them in the crust. So I just realized that I gave you the recipe for 1 crust, but the filling for 2 quiches. So double the crust recipe or half the quiche recipe to make sense. I'm sorry about that. So when I was telling you the ingredients to the crust, that was for 1. So I would double it and make 2 quiches, because you can't just have 1 quiche. I mean, seriously. So this one is the butternut squash one. And the spinach, mushroom, and onion one, that's all I'm putting there. And I think I'm going to add some more spinach to this one, since that's all that's in there. I don't want it to be so light. Just a little more hardiness to it. And I really am hoping that this turns out yummy. It sounds yummy, but since it's cashew cream instead of heavy cream, I hope it works great. And I've got 2 cups, so I'm going to put a cup and a cup, obviously. And just pour it right over. And I always move it around just to make sure it's all submerged so that it wilts. And the oven is still at 400 from when I was roasting the butternut squash, so I'm going to go ahead and pop these in there. It says 15 to 18 minutes, and then they'll be done. all that's in there, I'm going to tidy up the kitchen and I'll show you the results when it's over.